Hello, do you miss Bloomburrow? If it feels like it was only out for a few weeks before Duskmorn arrived, well, that's because it was only out for a few weeks before Duskmorn arrived. I guess they had to get Duskmorn out real fast because if they had waited a whole other month, then it would have pre-released around Halloween, and that would have been thematically weird. No, wait, what? Anyway, if you're not ready for the horrors of the 1980s and would like to spend a little longer in the wonderful world of Bloomburrow, then this video is for you because we are building the lost Bloomburrow Commander deck. While the Bloomburrow Commander decks were a lot of fun, there was one thing that really bummed me out about them, and that's that Wild Seer Scouring Maw, the sweet backup commander for the Gruul animated army Precon, didn't really get much support in that Precon to run it as a commander for the deck. Wild Seer, the backup commander, is actually an awesome take on the Enchantress archetype in a color pair that hasn't had a good Enchantress commander before. So it was a real bummer that taking the backup commander and running it as a commander of this Precon didn't really work very well. But then I thought, hey, why don't we just design our own Precon around Wild Seer, the lost Precon of Bloomburrow? So introducing Enchanting Hot Dog is a Gruul Enchantress Precon built around the Cascade mechanic. At the time of its release, Animated Army had a total card value of $142.50, so that's our budget for this lost Precon. We take the backup commander out of the original Precon deck, a deck that did not have much in the way of support for this particular commander, and we've built a new deck all around Wild Seer's mechanics, but using the exact same or near exact same budget. The commander for Enchanting Hot Dog is Wild Seer Scouring Maw, a 6/6 fiery elemental wolf with trample and a sweet ability. Enchantment spells you cast from your hand have Cascade. Wild Spear is an awesome headliner for the Enchantress archetype, but in the original Animated Army Precon, there were only 13 enchantments to Cascade with. But don't worry, Enchanting Hot Dog doesn't have that problem, because 44 of the 62 non-land cards in the 99 are enchantments. We'll be covering everything you need to know to build this deck, including some interesting options for upgrades for those of you with deeper wallets. There's also something else a bit wacky here, but we'll get to that in a moment. For now, let's start the fire. And remember, if you're looking to play free webcam games of Commander, the Tolarian Community College's Discord Looking for Games section is 100% free, so you can shuffle up and play in a cool, fun space. So whether you're looking for free webcam games of Commander or any Magic the Gathering format for that matter, just go to discord.gg/Tolarian Community College. It's free. Looking for a game? Obviously, with over 2/3 of the non-land cards in this deck being enchantments, we should start this deck with enchantments. The top of Hot Dog's curve is Nyxborn Behemoth, a sweet addition to the enchantment WinCon suite, brought to us from the Abzan Enchantress Precon in Commander Masters. Though this thing's mana value is always 12, you're likely to be able to cast it for much less, while still cascading as though it were a 12-cost spell. That means you can hit literally any spell in the deck list off this guy, even say Archetype of Endurance or Sandworm Convergence. Hey, Endurance, Convergence, those two cards rhyme. Am I a poet and I didn't know it? Oh wait, I did know it, because I went into debt to get a degree in poetry. Silly me. I should have just made internet videos. Where were we? Oh yes, Archetype of Endurance. It costs a lot of mana, but it makes up for it by effectively shutting off all of your opponent's spot removal. Sandworm Convergence, on the other hand, puts a hard no-fly zone down on any potential attackers while gradually building up a board full of worms on the ground, or should I say in the ground. Anyway, these two cards each cost 8 mana, which means if you cast them from your hand, you could cascade into Nylea's Colossus, another classic Enchantress card. This one will make your creatures get big quick. And if you cast it from your hand, well, maybe you'll cascade into an enchantment that brings the pain, like Fiery Emancipation or Warstorm Surge. If you have both the Colossus and Warstorm Surge in play, and you cast an enchantment creature, you can stack the triggers so the Colossus doubles the creature's power before Warstorm Surge goes off, dealing twice as much damage. Speaking of bringing the pain, another 6-drop you could cascade into is Overlord of the Boiler Bilge, a sweet new enchantment creature from Duskmorn that deals 4 damage whenever it enters or attacks. If you cast this thing for its impending cost, you still cascade as if it were 6 mana mana despite only spending 4 mana to impend it. If a single cascade trigger per spell you cast from your hand isn't enough chaos for you, might I suggest a Sunbird's Invocation, thoughtfully provided to us by the very same Precon that gave us Wild Seer. With the Sunbird's Invocation in play, spells you cast from your hand let you look at cards on the top of your library equal to the spell's mana value, and cast a card of equal or lesser mana value from among them for free. Lastly, at the 6 mana value slot, we've got Mana Reflection and Primeval Bounty, a pair of green enchantments that keep the party going in different ways, either by boosting your mana production to new heights, or by providing additional value for every card you play. And of course, all these enchantments cast from your hand are capable of cascading into a quartet of 5 mana enchantments that provide a significant boost to your combat step, either by buffing your creature's power or by giving all your attacking creatures double strike. Now I know what you're thinking, but Professor, how are you going to cast all of these expensive spells? Ha ha ha. Oh, viewer, it's Commander, so we're using ramp, of course, but in this deck, enchantment-based ramp specifically. Enchanting Hot Dogs got all the greatest hits in enchantment-based mana acceleration. The sheer volume of value in this deck makes you incredibly mana hungry, so these ramp spells will still be useful even if you hit them off mid-game cascades. We've also got some ramp spells at 3 and 4 mana value, which play double duty as both acceleration for your expensive plays and as cascade spells to dig up additional 2 and 1 drops. Every Commander deck needs some spot removal, and Enchanting Hot Dog is no exception. Lignify, Kenrith's Transformation, Trickster's Elk, and Song of the Dryads enchant your opponent's problematic cards. Keep in mind that when you bestow Trickster's Elk from your hand onto an opponent's creature for 2 mana, it cascades as if it were a 3 mana spell. Now there's only room for 1 Enchantress player on the block, which is why we've also got a couple disenchanting enchantments in the form of Seal of Primordium and Cinder Vines. And now that we're at the bottom of the mana curve, let's talk about a few key role players. Destiny Spinner keeps your obnoxious blue opponents from countering your enchantments, which comes in handy when you cast your big splashy curve toppers. In the late game, she also provides a mana sink, turning your lands into big beefy threats. Courser of Crufix provides a nice life total buffer while clearing lands off the top of your deck. It even gives you a sneak peek at what you could cascade into, which can help you sequence your turns. If you're deciding between casting a 3 mana enchantment or a 5 mana enchantment first, for instance, and you see a 4-drop on top of your library, you should cast the 5 mana enchantment first. The reverse is true if there's a 2-drop on top of your library, as you'll want to cast the 3 mana enchantment to get maximum value out of your cascade. Clothis, God of Destiny. Is it Clothis or Cloithus? Or maybe Clothes? The God of Destiny provides you with some minor graveyard hate, while also serving as a reasonably consistent ramp spell if you play in a meta with many fetch lands. Even if you don't, the life total buffer she provides from exiling non-lands, all while pinging your opponents for 2, is nothing to sneeze at, especially if, say it with me folks, you have Fiery Emancipation in play. Weaver of Harmony doubles up on an activated or triggered ability from an enchantment once per turn. Remember that this includes copying the cascade trigger from an enchantment you cast from hand. Springheart Nantuko is a very powerful clone effect in green that happens to be an enchantment as well. Weaver of Harmony is one of the best creatures you can clone with Nantuko, just so you can copy multiple enchantment abilities in a given turn cycle. Lastly, we've got an exceptionally powerful card draw engine hiding out in the 2 mana slot on our curve. Up the Beanstalk, which draws a card not just when it enters, but also whenever you cast Wild Spear, or anytime you cast any of the 14 spells in the 99 with mana value 5 or greater. If this draws you even just 2 cards, that's great value for 2 mana, but it's likely that an Up the Beanstalk you cast in the early game will net you many more cards than that. Okay, so we've put a bunch of enchantments in our deck, and they've cascaded into other enchantments. Sounds like we'd benefit from putting some enchantment payoffs in our deck as well. For starters, every Enchantress variant that's in our colors and within our budget is in the deck. That includes Elvish Archivist, Enchantress's Presence, Setessan Champion, and Eidolon of Blossoms. These cards are extremely important in the deck, as Wild Seer only gives Cascade to enchantment spells that you cast from hand. That means you'll need to keep drawing cards in order to keep cascading. Remember that cascading an enchantment off of Cascade does trigger Enchantress's Presence. Nessian Wanderer will help you hit every land drop, while Composer of Spring can help you translate extra lands you have in hand into ramp. until you control 6 enchantments, at which point you'll start putting creatures into play for free. At that point, who even needs 8 mana to cast an archetype of endurance? Helm of the Gods and Ancestral Mask will help you bring the beatdowns once it comes time to actually win the game. Helm of the Gods is particularly great in this deck because you're so likely to find it. You don't have that many other spells that 2 mana enchantments can cascade into. To go with this minor Voltron sub-theme, we also have Bear Umbra, which plays triple duty as protection for Wild Spear thanks to Totem Armor, a mana boost for casting more cascade spells from hand, and a nice power and toughness boost that turns your Wild Spear into a trampling 3-hit commander damage kill. Forgeborn Areeds will be a nightmare for any small creature deck you play against. And if you have that precious Fiery Emancipation in play as well, then all of a sudden, every Constellation trigger will provide you with a literal lightning bolt. It's easy to forget in all the Enchantress value that Enchanting Hot Dog isn't just an Enchantress deck. It's also a Cascade deck. Unfortunately, Wild Seer does not grant an additional instance of Cascade to any enchantments you cast off your first Cascade. Wild Magic Sorcerer does, though, at least for the first spell you cascade into each turn. Now for the weirdest inclusions in the deck list. See, we've got these 1-mana enchantments in our deck. Maybe we have them in our opening hand and cast them on turn 1. But what if we draw them later in the game, once Wild Seer is already in play? Wouldn't it be cool if we could cascade into something awesome with them? Well, you can. Thanks to these 4-mana suspend cards, any 1-mana enchantment you cast with Wild Seer in play is guaranteed to hit one of Black Lotus, or pretty much the equivalent, Soul Ring, Wheel of Fortune, or whatever classic spell makes 2 4/4 rhinos. Of course, you can also hit these cards if you cascade off a higher mana value spell if your deck lines up that way, but your 1-mana enchantments are your surest bet for doing so. If you happen to draw one of these suspend cards early, that's okay. They're all super cheap to suspend, so you can toss them into exile for a later turn while you're developing the rest of your game plan. One of the things that's so great about this deck is that it doesn't need much in the way of upgrades. I feel very confident that you can play the deck list linked in this video's description without doing anything to it and hold your own against your established and experienced commander friends. However, for those of you with deep wallets or just your mom and dad's credit card, I do have a few upgrade suggestions for you. 3 key ones, as well as some ideas about what to swap out in their place. So one of the first things I would look to do if I wanted to upgrade this deck would be to get my hands on an Argothian Enchantress. The OG Enchantress is still the best in the business thanks to its cheap mana value and Shroud. I'd also spring for an Overlord of the Haunt Woods, which is great for all the same reasons Overlord of the Boiler Bilge is great, but for 1 less mana. And if you've got that extra little cash to burn in your wallet, Nyxbloom Ancient should absolutely be in your shopping cart. But keep in mind that does mean shelling out an additional $30. But it'll really help bring this deck to the next level as a 7-mana value Cascader that also explodes your mana output once it's in play is simply too perfect an addition to this deck list. To make room for these 3 upgrades, I would cut Bitter Reunion, Omen of the Hunt, and Sandworm Convergence. Enchanting Hot Dog brings all the magnificent chaos of the Gruul color pair to the usually elegant Enchantress archetype. This deck is an absolute blast to pilot. Once you have your card draw engines online and plenty of mana to work with, you'll get to pull off some truly ridiculous turns, and isn't that what Commander is all about? If you'd like to see more from our Build Your Own Precon series, you can check out the entire playlist of all these awesome past decks that we've designed, as well as our episode of Shuffle Up and Play, where we pitted our Build Your Own Precon decks against one another. All of those videos, as well as this deck list, are found in this video's description, and remember, if you're looking to play free games of Webcam Commander, well, the TCC Discord server's Looking for Games section is 100% free. You can even play non-Commander formats on there if you still remember what those are. Either way, just go to discord.gg/Tolarian Community College and you can start getting webcam games of Commander or whatever format you enjoy for free. Maybe I'll see you there.
Next time on Shuffle Up and Play.
Today, we are janking each other off. This is a jank off. The criteria, which I hope we all followed this time. No card in the deck can be more than $1, including your commander.
I think this is a ruse.
Don't use big words around me, sir.
It's got 4 letters, it's more than 3.
Right.
Florida math.
Judge, this card costs more than $1.
I'm not gonna let a whole table sass me.
What are you doing? I'm not done. What are you doing there, Jared?
It's my nervous tick when I dropped from 40 to 11 in one turn cycle.
So we're gonna move to combat. I'm not
Just
that
tell
type
me
of
how
guy.
much damage.
But I'm gonna hit
Just-
this man in the
just
face.
tell me how
so
much
we're gonna go
damage.
to combat.
I'm gonna roll with absolute cruelty. I mean, I'm the one.
Just like back home.
Wow.